Commander Sarah almost dropped her coffee when the alarm started screaming. Across Outpost 7, she had been watching the stars through the observation deck. When the sound cut through the quiet, morning shift, red lights flashed everywhere as she ran to the command center. "What's happening?" she asked Lieutenant Brooks, who was staring at his screen with wide eyes. "Commander, you need to see this," Brooks said. His voice shook a little. "We have a contact coming in fast, but the computer says it's impossible." Sarah looked at the main screen. A ship was moving toward them, but something was very wrong. There were no energy trails behind it, no signs of any engine she knew about. The ship just appeared to be floating through space like it had always been there. "Run a full scan," she ordered, "and get me ship identification." The scanning took longer than usual. When the results came back, Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. The computer showed a ship that should not exist anymore. "T's Prometheus," Brooks read from his screen. "But Commander, that ship disappeared 15 years ago. It was declared lost with all hands." Sarah remembered the Prometheus. It was a deep space exploration ship that had gone beyond the edge of their galaxy. 200 brave people had been on board when it vanished. The search had lasted 3 years before they finally gave up hope. "Are you sure the scan is right?" she asked. "I've run it 5 times, Brooks replied. "It's definitely the Prometheus. Same hull design, same energy signature. But there's something strange about the materials." Sarah moved closer to look at the readings. The ship's hull showed elements that were not on any chart she had ever seen. The energy output was also much higher than any ship their size should be able to produce. "Try to contact them," she said. Brooks worked at his controls for a moment. Then a voice came through the speakers. It was clear and strong. "Outpost 7, this is Captain of the T's Prometheus. We are requesting immediate communication with the highest-ranking Terran official in this sector." Sarah grabbed the communication device. "Captain, this is Commander. We thought your ship was lost 15 years ago. What happened to you?" There was a short pause before answered. "Commander, that is a long story. We have made contact with something beyond anything the Empire has ever seen. We bring gifts for humanity's future, but we must speak with someone who has the authority to make important decisions." Sarah felt a chill run down her back. The captain's voice sounded different. Somehow more confident, more knowing. Like she had learned secrets that changed everything. "Captain, I need to verify your identity," Sarah said. "Can you provide your authorization codes?" The codes came back immediately. They were correct. They matched exactly what was in the files from 15 years ago, but that should have been impossible. Those codes would have expired long ago. Commander said, "We understand this is difficult to believe. We know we have been gone for a very long time, but we have returned with knowledge that will change everything for humanity. Please contact Admiral immediately. Tell him we have found what lies beyond the rim." Sarah looked around the command center. Her crew was staring at her, waiting for orders. She had to make a decision that could affect the entire Empire. "Brooks, send an emergency message to Fleet Command," she said. "Tell them the Prometheus has returned and is requesting immediate contact with Admiral. Mark it as highest priority." "Yes, Commander," Brooks replied and started working. Sarah turned back to the communication system. "Captain, we are contacting Admiral now, but I need You to answer some questions while we wait. Of course, Commander, where have you been for 15 years, and how did you get back here so fast? We detected no hyperspace distortion, no quantum tunnel signature. You just appeared. Was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried something that sounded almost like sadness. Commander, we learned that the ways we used to travel through space are very limited. There are much better methods, much faster methods. We no longer need the old technologies. What do you mean? Sarah asked. We met something out there, Commander. Something that has been waiting for a very long time. It taught us things about the universe that are best scientists never imagined. We have seen what humanity can become. The scan results updated on the main screen. Sarah read them and felt her breath catch. The Prometheus was not just using unknown materials, it was generating energy in ways that their physics said were impossible. Captain, our scans show energy readings that don't make sense, Sarah said. Hell, is your ship powered? We no longer use fusion reactors. Commander, we have learned to work with forces that exist everywhere in the universe, forces that can be shaped by consciousness itself. Sarah exchanged looks with her crew. What was saying sounded like fantasy. But the ship was real, the energy readings were real. Commander continued. I know this is hard to understand. We felt the same way when we first learned these things, but humanity is ready for the next step. We have proven ourselves worthy. Worthy of what? Worthy of graduation, Commander. There are others out there, beings that have watched us for a long time. Some of them are not friendly. Humanity needs to grow stronger very quickly, or we will face extinction. The communication system beeped with an incoming message. Brooks, read it and turn to Sarah. Commander, Admiral is coming personally. He'll be here in 6 hours. Sarah nodded and spoken to the communicator again. Captain, Admiral will be here soon. Will you wait for him? Of course, Commander. We have waited 15 years to return home. We can wait a few more hours to share what we have learned. The Prometheus moved into a stable orbit around the outpost. Sarah watched it on the screen and wondered what secrets the ship carried, what had happened to change a normal exploration mission into something that sounded impossible. In 6 hours, she would start to get her answers, but somehow she knew that those answers would change everything for humanity forever. Admiral arrived exactly 6 hours later, his flagship cutting through space with the urgency that marked all his missions. Sarah watched from the observation deck as the massive vessel took position near the outpost. She had never seen the Admiral move so quickly for anything. Within an hour was standing in her command center, studying the readings from the Prometheus. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Sarah had served under him years ago and knew he was not easily impressed. These energy readings, said, pointing at the screen, are they accurate? We've checked them 20 times, Admiral. Sarah replied. The Prometheus is producing more energy than ships 10 times its size, and we still can't identify how they're doing it. Nodded slowly. Have they agreed to let us board? Captain said they would meet with you personally, sir, but only you and a small team. They seem very careful about something. Then let's go see what 15 years beyond the rim does to a crew, said. The shuttle ride to the Prometheus was quiet. Sarah accompanied the Admiral along with Dr. Maya, the Empire's top physicist, and 2 security officers. As they approached the ship, Sarah noticed something strange about its hull. It seemed to shimmer slightly like heat, waves rising from hot ground. "Are you seeing that?" Doctor asked, pointing at the hull. "The shimmering effect." "Confirmed. I've never seen anything like it." They docked without problems, but when the airlock opened, Sarah felt immediately that something was different. The air inside felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. The corridors looked the same as any Terran ship, but there was an energy humming through everything. Captain met them at the airlock. She looked exactly as she had 15 years ago, which should have been impossible. Her crew members nearby also appeared, unchanged by time, but their eyes were different. They held a depth that seemed to look right through everything. Admiral said, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." Personally shook her hand and studied her face. "Captain, you look remarkably well for someone who's been missing for 15 years. Smiled, but there was something sad in her expression. "Time works differently when you understand how the universe really functions." Admiral, she led them through the corridors toward what had once been the main conference room. As they walked, Sarah noticed crew members working at stations that didn't look like any technology she knew. The controls seemed to respond to touch and thought at the same time. "Captain," Doctor said, "what happened to your ship? The materials we're detecting shouldn't exist." Doctor replied, "Everything you think you know about matter and energy is just the beginning. We learned that from the curator." The curator asked. They entered the conference room, which had been completely changed. Instead of a regular table and chairs, there was a circular space with seats that seemed to be grown from some kind of crystal. Light moved through the walls in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Please sit," said. "What I'm going to tell you will be difficult to believe." They sat in the crystal chairs, which adjusted automatically to fit each person perfectly. Sarah felt a tingling sensation like mild electricity moving through her body. Beyond the galactic rim began. "We found something that had been waiting for a very long time. An artificial intelligence that called itself the curator. It was old, Admiral. Older than our sun, older than most of the stars we can see." An AI said. "Hostile?" "Not hostile," replied, "but completely alien. It told us it had been waiting for a species to prove they were ready for what it called graduation." Doctor leaned forward. "What kind of graduation?" Gestured to one of her crew members, who approached carrying what looked like a small piece of metal. But as Sarah watched, the crew member held the metal in his hands and it began to change. It flowed like liquid, then hardened into a perfect sphere, then became a cube. Curator taught us that consciousness and matter are connected in ways we never understood. Continued. It showed us how to expand our awareness beyond the limits of normal human thinking. The crew member set the metal down on the floor. It had become a miniature sculpture of the solar system with tiny planets orbiting a glowing sun. "That's impossible," Doctor whispered. "No," said. "It's just advanced." The curator explained that most species never learn these abilities because they're too focused on building machines instead of expanding their minds. Was studying the metal sculpture. What did this curator want in return? "Nothing, Admiral," it said. "Humanity impressed it. Our curiosity, our willingness to explore, even when it was dangerous." our ability to adapt to anything. It decided we were ready to take the next step. And what step is that? Sarah asked, stood up and moved to the wall. She placed her hand against it, and suddenly the wall became transparent. Outside, Sarah could see space, but not like she had ever seen it before. There were streams of energy flowing between the stars, patterns of light that connected everything. We can see the quantum structure of reality now, so we can navigate not just through space but through the possibilities that exist in quantum foam. We found routes to other galaxies. We've detected signals from dozens of intelligent species. How many crew members underwent this process? Asked. All of us who wanted to. Replied it was voluntary. About 30 chose not to change. They're still human in the old way, and we respect that choice. Doctor was taking notes frantically. Can you teach others? Can you share this knowledge? That's why we came back, said. Her expression became serious. The curator warned us about something. Admiral, humanity has been noticed. Noticed by what? Demanded by other intelligences that move between the stars. Some of them are like the curator, interested in helping species evolve, but others are not so kind. They see young civilizations as threats to be eliminated or resources to be harvested. Returned to her seat. The wall became solid again, but Sarah could still feel the energy moving through it. Our expansion beyond the solar system has attracted attention. Continued the empire's growth, our rapid technological development, our aggressive exploration. We've been marked as a species that needs to be watched, and some of those watchers are already moving toward us. How long do we have? Asked the curator. Estimated 6 months before the first scouts arrive, said maybe less. We need to help humanity evolve quickly, or we will face extinction. Doctor looked up from her notes. Can the transformation be reversed? No, said quietly. Once you see reality as it truly is, you can never go back to the limited view, but you don't lose what makes you human. You become more human in ways that matter. Stood up slowly. Sarah could see him thinking through all the implications of what they had learned. This was the kind of decision that would affect billions of people. Captain, he said finally, we need to see more proof of these abilities, and we need to understand exactly what threats we're facing. Of course, Admiral replied, we have prepared demonstrations, but I must warn you, once you see what's possible, everything will change for you as well. As they prepared to leave the conference room, Sarah realized that they had just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Humanity was about to face its greatest test. 3 days later, Admiral stood in the secure testing facility in the Tau system, watching something that would have been called magic a week ago. Dr. Maya stood beside him, her scientific instruments spread across several tables, all of them showing readings that should not exist. Captain sat in the center of the testing chamber, completely relaxed. In front of her was a pile of basic elements: iron, carbon, silicon, aluminum. Nothing special, nothing that couldn't be found on any industrial world. Are you ready? Doctor asked. Maya nodded, though her hands shook as she checked her instruments one more time. All sensors are recording. Molecular scanners are active. Energy detectors are running. Closed her eyes and placed her hands just above the pile of elements. For a moment nothing happened. Then the air around her hands began to shimmer. Elements started to glow with a soft Blue light. Maya watched her instruments. In amazement, I'm reading massive. Quantum fluctuations, she said too. Admiral, the molecular structure of the materials is changing. The pile of elements began to flow together like liquid metal, guided it with her hands. Never actually touching it, the flowing material formed shapes, first a sphere, then a pyramid, then something more complex. The atomic bonds are being restructured. Maya continued, her voice getting more excited. She's rearranging matter at the fundamental level, but without any external energy source. I can detect the flowing material settled into its final form, a cube about the size of a person's head. It was perfectly smooth and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Opened her eyes and smiled. Doctor, please scan the cube. Maya ran her instruments over the new object. The readings made her step back in surprise. This is impossible. The material is showing properties of a room temperature superconductor, but the crystal structure is unlike anything in our databases. It's stronger than diamond, according to these readings, but it weighs almost nothing. How? Admiral asked, stood up and walked to the cube. The curator taught us that consciousness can directly interact with quantum probability. Every particle exists in multiple states until something observes it and collapses the probability into reality. We learn to guide that collapse with our minds. She touched the cube and it began to change again. This time it became transparent like glass. But Maya's instrument showed it was still just as strong. We can create any material we need. Continued. Energy storage crystals that make fusion reactors look like campfires. Hull materials that can repair themselves. Computers that think using quantum entanglement. Doctor was taking notes frantically. The energy readings during the transformation. Where was the power coming from? From the quantum field that connects everything in the universe. Replied, it's all around us all the time. Most species never learn to access it because they think consciousness and physics are separate things. Admiral walked closer to examine the cube. What else can you do? Gestured to Lieutenant Commander Sarah, another member of the transformed crew. Approached a different table where various broken objects had been placed. A shattered ceramic cup, a bent metal rod, electronic components with obvious damage. Placed her hands over the broken items. The same blue shimmer appeared and slowly the objects began to repair themselves. The ceramic pieces flowed back together without any visible seam. The bent metal straightened. The electronic components rebuilt their damaged circuits. Matter wants to exist in its most stable form. Explained, we can help it find that form by understanding its quantum structure. Doctor ran to scan the repaired objects. Perfect restoration, she said in wonder. No trace of the previous damage. The molecular structure is actually improved from the original. That's not all, said. She moved to the largest table in the room where a complex star chart was displayed. We can also perceive quantum probabilities directly. This allows us to navigate in ways that make hyperspace look primitive. She placed her hands over the star chart and suddenly the flat display became three-dimensional. Stars appeared to float in the air above the table, connected by streams of light that pulsed with energy. These are the quantum pathways that connect all matter in the universe. Explained, by following these paths we can travel to other galaxies in days instead of centuries. Admiral studied the floating stars. You've mapped routes to other galaxies. Yes, replied, and we've detected signals from other intelligent species, dozens of them. The universe is much more crowded than we thought. The star map zoomed in on a particular section of space. Several red indicators appeared, moving slowly but steadily toward their galaxy. These are the hostile intelligences the curator warned us about. Continued, they call themselves the hegemony. They've destroyed 43 species over the last 1,000 years. Doctor looked up from her instruments. How do you know that? We intercepted their communications, Lieutenant. Commander replied, they keep detailed records of their conquests. They study each species to find the most efficient way to eliminate them. Admiral felt a chill run down his spine. How powerful are they? Manipulated the star map to show the approaching ships in more detail. They were massive, larger than any human vessel. Their energy signatures were similar to what the Prometheus now carried, but darker. Somehow they used similar technologies to what the curator taught us, said, but they use them only for destruction. They never learn to grow beyond their need for conquest. When will they arrive? Asked. Based on their current speed, approximately 5 months, replied. But Admiral, they're not the only ones coming. The star map changed again, showing movement from several different directions. Some of the indicators were neutral yellow, others were green. Other species have also detected the hegemony's movement. Explained, some are coming to help defend our galaxy, others are coming to study what happens when the hegemony encounters a species like humanity. Doctor was staring at the map with wide eyes. A species like humanity, what makes us special? Smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the explorer who had left 15 years ago. Doctor, in all the curator's long existence, we are only the third species to achieve consciousness expansion so quickly after first contact. Most species take centuries, or to accept the possibility. Humans adapted in months. Why? Admiral asked. Because humans never assume something is impossible just because we don't understand it yet. Replied, most species see the unknown as something to fear. Humans see it as something to explore. She moved her hands over the star map one more time, and the display zoomed out to show their entire galaxy. Hundreds of tiny lights appeared, representing different civilizations. The curator told us something important. Continued, species that achieve consciousness expansion have a choice. They can use their new abilities to conquer others like the hegemony, or they can use them to help other species evolve. And which path are we choosing? Asked, looked at each of them in turn. That depends on what the Empire decides to do with what we've shown you today. The curator gave us these gifts freely, asking only that we use them wisely. We can transform willing humans across the Empire, giving us the power to defend ourselves against the hegemony. But Doctor sensed there was more. But the transformation changes people forever. Said quietly, they become more than human in some ways, but they're still human in the ways that matter. The choice has to be voluntary. Forced evolution never works. Admiral walked around the table, studying the star map from different angles. The weight of the decision was enormous. Transform humanity to face an alien threat, or remain as they were and probably face extinction. How many people can you transform? He asked. As many as choose to change. Replied, the process becomes easier as more people complete it. Consciousness expansion spreads naturally between connected minds. The testing session continued for several more hours, and her crew demonstrated abilities that rewrote everything humanity thought they knew about physics. They showed how to communicate instantly across any distance, how to see through space and time, how to heal injuries by restructuring damaged tissue at the molecular level. By the end of the day, Doctor had filled 3 notebooks with observations that would change science forever. Admiral had seen enough to know that humanity was facing its greatest challenge and its greatest opportunity. At the same time, as they prepared to leave the facility, approached the Admiral one last time. Admiral, she said, the Empire has to decide quickly. The hegemony has already sent scout ships ahead of their main fleet. We estimate they'll arrive in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Felt his heart skip a beat. You said 5 months before for the main fleet. Yes, but the scouts move much faster. They'll assess our defenses and report back. If they find us unchanged, the main fleet will attack immediately. But if they find us evolved, what then? Smiled. Then humanity gets to choose what kind of cosmic citizen we want to become. The emergency session of the Terran High Council was unlike anything in the Empire's history. Representatives from every human world sat in the great chamber on Earth, their faces grim as they watched Admiral present evidence that challenged everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the universe. The energy readings are confirmed, said, standing before the massive display screen. The Prometheus crew can manipulate matter at the atomic level using only their consciousness. They've demonstrated faster than light communication and navigation methods that make our current technology look primitive. Council Chairman David Martinez sat at the head of the horseshoe-shaped table, his weathered face showing the strain of the past week. Behind him, the flags of 50 human colonies hung in silent witness to the most important decision in their species history. Admiral Martinez said, these claims sound like fantasy. How can we be certain this isn't some kind of elaborate hoax? Dr. Maya stepped forward. She had barely slept since the demonstrations at Tau, working around the clock to verify every impossible thing she had witnessed. Chairman Martinez, I've spent my entire career studying physics. What I've seen in the past week has forced me to throw out half of what I thought I understood about the universe. She activated her data pad and detailed molecular scans appeared on the main screen. These materials should not exist according to our current knowledge, yet I've tested them myself. They're real. General Harrison, the Empire's military commander, stood up from his seat. He was a large man with hands and cold eyes, who had fought in the border wars against the rebels. Even if this is real, said, we're talking about fundamentally changing what it means to be human, this transformation process. How do we know it's safe? How do we know these people are still loyal to the Empire? The crew of the Prometheus has shown nothing but loyalty, Admiral replied. They returned home voluntarily to share this knowledge. Did they challenged, or were they sent back by this curator as some kind of advanced force? How do we know this entire situation isn't an invasion disguised as a gift? Counselor from the Mars colony raised her hand. She was one of the younger members of the council, a scientist before she entered politics. General, even if that were true, the alternative is extinction, she said. Admiral has shown us evidence of hostile alien forces approaching our space. Whether we trust the Prometheus crew or not, we need to prepare for that threat. Turn to face her, and you think the answer is to turn our people into something non-human, to abandon everything that has made our civilization strong. What has made us strong is our ability to adapt, replied. We've colonized hostile worlds, survived wars, rebuilt after disasters. This is just the next challenge. Chairman Martinez called for order as voices began to rise around the chamber. The debate had been going for 3 days, and positions were hardening into 2 camps. The progressives, led by wanted to authorize the transformation process immediately. The following wanted to find military solutions that didn't require changing humanity itself. Doctor activated a new display showing the quantum pathway maps the captain had demonstrated. Council members, she said, we need to understand what we're really facing. This isn't just about defending our territory. According to the Prometheus crew, there are dozens of intelligent species in nearby galaxies. We're entering a much larger universe than we ever imagined. Counselor James Wright from Europa Colony stood up. He was one of the oldest members of the council, veteran of the early exploration missions. Doctor, assuming all of this is true, what guarantee do we have that these transformed humans will still care about the Empire? He asked. If they become something beyond normal humanity, why would they remain loyal to us? Before Doctor could answer, Admiral received an urgent communication on his personal device. His face went pale as he read the message. Chairman Martinez, he said, I'm receiving an emergency report from our deep space monitoring stations. We've detected multiple unknown contacts approaching from outside the galaxy. The council chamber fell silent. Martinez gestured for 2. Continue. Long-range sensors show 6 objects moving at impossible speeds. Continued. They're following the exact approach vectors that Captain predicted for the hegemony scout ships. When will they arrive? Martinez asked. 41 days. Replied, maybe less if they increase speed. General stood up again, his military mind immediately shifting to tactical considerations. Admiral, what are our defensive options with conventional forces? Looked around the chamber before answering. Based on the energy signatures we're detecting, our current weapons would be completely ineffective. These ships are using the same advanced technologies that the Prometheus now possesses. Then we fight them with the same technologies. Counselor said, we authorize the transformation process immediately and prepare as many people as possible. Absolutely not, replied. We don't surrender our humanity to fight aliens. There has to be another way. Chairman Martinez stood up, calling for order again. Council members, we need to make a decision. We can continue debating the philosophy of human evolution, but we have less than 6 weeks before hostile forces arrive in our space. Doctor stepped forward again. Chairman Martinez, I've been working with the Prometheus crew to understand the transformation process better. It's not actually changing human DNA or basic biology. It's expanding consciousness to access abilities that appear to be latent in all human minds. What do you mean? Wright asked. Think of it like learning to use a muscle you never knew you had. Doctor explained the potential was always there, the curators. Technology just showed humans how to access it. Shook his head. That's still changing what makes us human. No. General, a new voice said from the chamber entrance. It's becoming more human. Everyone turned to see Captain. Entering the council chamber, she had not been invited to this session, but no one moved to stop her. Captain Chairman Martinez said, "This is a closed session. I apologize for the intrusion." Chairman replied, "But I felt the council should know that we've been monitoring the approaching ships. We can intercept their communications." She activated a device that projected holographic text in the air above the council table. The language was completely alien, but a translation appeared below it. "This is a message from the lead scout ship," explained. "They're reporting to their command about human defensive capabilities. They've detected our conventional fleets and weapons." The translation reads, "Species shows primitive nuclear fusion technology, standard orbital bombardment protocols will be sufficient for elimination." The council chamber erupted in angry voices. The aliens were discussing humanity like an extermination problem. "There's more," continued. Another message appeared. This one was sent after they detected energy signatures from the Prometheus. The translation read, "Anomalous energy readings detected from target species. Possible evidence of evolution beyond expected parameters. Recommend immediate consultation with High Command." General studied the messages. "They're concerned about the Prometheus." "Yes," replied. "Species that achieve consciousness expansion become much more difficult for the hegemony to destroy. Most of their previous victories were against civilizations using conventional technology." Chairman Martinez sat down heavily. The weight of leadership had never felt heavier. "Captain, if we authorize the transformation process, how many people can be evolved before the scouts arrive?" "If we start immediately, several thousand," replied. "Enough to defend the core systems." "But Chairman, the process has to be voluntary. Forced evolution fails completely, and if people choose not to transform," Counselor Wright asked, "then they remain human in the old way and we protect them," said simply. "Evolution doesn't make anyone less valuable, it just gives them new abilities to help defend everyone." The debate continued for several more hours, but the approaching scout ships had changed everything. Even General began to see that conventional military options were limited. Finally, Chairman Martinez called for a vote, all in favor of authorizing voluntary consciousness expansion under the supervision of the Prometheus crew. Hands rose around the chamber. Right, and most of the younger council members voted yes. Doctor raised her hand as well, opposed General, and about a third of the council voted against the measure. The measure passes. Martinez announced, "Doctor, you'll oversee the scientific aspects. Admiral, coordinate with Captain on implementation." As the council session ended, Admiral approached General Harrison. "I know you disagree with this decision," said, "but we're going to need the military's full support." Looked out the window at Earth's blue sky, thinking about the alien ships approaching through space. "I've spent my life defending humanity," he said. "I just hope we're still defending the same thing when this is over." Outside the council building, Captain stood watching the sunset. Doctor joined her on the steps. "Captain, are you certain we're making the right choice?" Doctor asked. smiled, and for a moment she looked like any other human being enjoying the end of a difficult day. Doctor, the curator told me something important, she replied. Evolution isn't about becoming something different, it's about becoming everything you already were, but more completely. And if the hegemony scouts decide we're too dangerous, then humanity will face its first test as an evolved species, said, and I believe we'll surprise everyone, including ourselves, with what we're capable of. The transformation of humanity was about to begin. 6 months after the High Council's decision, Admiral stood on the command deck of the newly transformed flagship, watching something that would have been impossible a year ago. Through the quantum enhanced, he could see the approaching hegemony fleet, massive ships that bristled with weapons designed to destroy entire civilizations. But humanity was no longer the species the hegemony had expected to find. Admiral came the voice of Commander Sarah, who had volunteered for consciousness expansion 3 months earlier. Her eyes now held the same deep awareness as the Prometheus crew. The hegemony command ship is requesting communication. Nodded. He had chosen not to undergo the transformation himself, remaining as one of the bridges between old humanity and new humanity. About 40% of the Empire's population had made the same choice, and both groups worked together now in ways that surprised everyone. Put them through, said the Shimurd, and displayed the interior of an alien ship. The creature that appeared was unlike anything in human databases, tall with dark gray skin that seemed to absorb light and eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. I am war leader of the hegemony fleet, the alien said, its voice translated by the quantum communication system. You will surrender your worlds for harvest, or we will take them by force. This is the only warning you will receive. Was about to respond when another voice filled the command deck. War leader said. Captain, who materialized on the bridge using consciousness enhanced matter transportation. I am Captain speaking. For evolved humanity, we offer you a different choice. The alien's expression changed to one of surprise. You have achieved consciousness expansion that was not in our intelligence reports. Your reports were based on old information, replied calmly. Humanity has graduated, as the curator would say. We are no longer the species you plan to destroy. Glowing eyes narrowed. Graduated species are still mortal. We have destroyed 3 others in the past millennium. Then you chose poorly, said, because graduated species have something your kind never learned. And what is that? Gestured, and suddenly the showed not just the hegemony fleet, but also ships from dozens of other species that had been watching from quantum-fold space. Some of the ships were massive, dwarfing even the hegemony vessels. Others were small but radiated the same energy signature as the transformed human ships. We have friends, said simply. War leader stepped back from his communication console. Impossible. No species has ever united so many others. Species that offer evolution instead of conquest tend to attract allies. Admiral added, in the past 6 months, we've made contact with 47 different civilizations. 15 of them have asked us to share the consciousness expansion process. The alien was silent for a long moment, studying the readouts that his own sensors must have been providing. You cannot have learned so much so quickly, said finally. Commander stepped Forward, war leader, that's exactly what makes humanity unusual. We learn fast. We adapt quickly and we share what we discover. Move to the center of the command deck, and the air around her began to shimmer with the quantum field that connected all conscious minds. War leader, she said, your species has spent centuries conquering others, but what have you learned? What have you grown into? You're still the same beings you were when you first achieved space travel. We are strong, replied. We are feared across 100 systems, but are you more than you were? Asked, have you discovered anything about the universe that doesn't involve destroying other species? On the they could see other figures moving around the hegemony command deck. The alien crew seemed to be having some kind of discussion. Captain Admiral said quietly, what are you doing? Something the curator taught us, replied. True strength isn't the power to destroy others, it's the power to help them become more than they were. She raised her hand and the quantum shimmer around her intensified. Through the communication link, that energy began to flow toward the hegemony ship. What is this? Demanded, backing away from his console. It's a choice, said. Your species can continue on the path of conquest, and eventually you'll meet someone stronger who will destroy you, or you can choose to evolve. We're offering to teach you the same process that the curator taught us. The energy field reached the hegemony ship, but instead of causing damage, it simply surrounded the alien vessel in the same gentle blue light that marked consciousness expansion. You're offering to transform us, said his voice filled with disbelief. Yes, replied the curator, told us that every species eventually faces this choice: growth or destruction, evolution or extinction. Most choose destruction because they don't know there's another path. Dr. Fermaya, who now served as humanity's first cosmic science advisor, stepped into view of the communication screen. War leader, she said, we've studied your species' history through intercepted communications. You were explorers once before you became conquerors. You had art, music, philosophy. The expansion process doesn't take that away, it helps you rediscover it. Looked around his command deck, then back at the screen. And if we refuse? Admiral answered this time, then our allied fleets will defend our space, and you'll have to find somewhere else to expand, but you won't learn anything new. And eventually, you'll face extinction when you meet someone even stronger, and if we accept, then you become part of something larger, said a growing alliance of evolved species working together to explore the universe and help other civilizations grow. The curator said this was the goal all along, to fill the galaxy with consciousness that creates instead of destroys. The communication link was quiet for several minutes. Through their enhanced awareness, the transformed humans could sense the intense discussion taking place on the hegemony ships. Finally, return to the screen. I have consulted with my fleet commanders. We have never encountered a species that offered to strengthen their enemies. We're not strengthening an enemy, commander said. We're creating a friend. This consciousness expansion said. How do we know it will not destroy what we are? Doctor smiled. War leader, I was terrified of the same thing, but consciousness expansion doesn't make you less of who you are, it makes you more. You keep everything that makes your species unique. You just gain the ability to see beyond the need for conquest. Stepped closer to the war leader. Your Choice here will determine the future of your entire species. You can continue the path that leads to inevitable extinction, or you can begin a journey that has no ending. Was quiet for another long moment when he spoke. Again, his voice was different, less harsh. If we agree to this, what happens to our fleet? Your weapons become tools for building instead of destroying. Admiral replied, your ships become exploration vessels. Your warriors become teachers, helping other species evolve, and the species we have conquered, you help them heal, said gently. Consciousness expansion makes you understand the pain you've caused, but it also gives you the power to repair it. The hegemony war leader looked around his command deck one more time, then back at the screen. Very well, he said, we choose evolution. The next few hours changed the galaxy forever. One by one, the hegemony ships moved into position around the human vessel. The consciousness expansion energy flowed between them, guided by human minds that had learned to share the gift the curator had given them. Admiral watched from the Terran Nova as alien ships began to shimmer with the same blue light that now marked evolved consciousness. He felt a sense of pride that had nothing to do with conquest or victory. Admiral Commander said, we're receiving communications from the Allied fleet. They want to know if humanity is willing to help coordinate expansion efforts in other sectors. Looked at Captain, who had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to the cosmic community. Captain, are we ready for that responsibility? Smiled, and in that smile was the wonder of a species that had grown beyond its limitations while keeping everything that made it human. Admiral, the curator told me something before we left. It said that humanity was unusual, not just because we evolved quickly, but because we immediately wanted to share what we had learned. Most species take centuries to move beyond thinking only about themselves and humanity. Humanity started trying to help others evolve before we even finished evolving ourselves, said. That's what convinced the curator we were ready to graduate. Doctor approached, carrying reports from the successful transformations taking place throughout the fleet. Captain, we're receiving requests from 17 different species to begin consciousness expansion programs, she said. Word is spreading through the quantum communication network faster than we expected. Looked out at the stars where ships from dozens of civilizations were now working together, all connected by the expanded awareness that let them see beyond the narrow concerns of individual species. Then we'd better get started, she said. The universe is a big place, and there are a lot of species out there who still think conquest is the only path to growth. Admiral walked to the observation deck and looked out at what had once been humanity's greatest threat. The hegemony ships were now glowing with the same energy as human vessels, their crews beginning the journey from destroyers to builders. In 6 months, humanity had gone from a single galaxy species to the coordinators of an intergalactic alliance. They had faced extinction and chosen evolution, not just for themselves but for their enemies as well. Commander joined him at the observation window. Admiral, do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Prometheus had never found the curator? Consider the question as he watched ships from dozens of species working together in perfect harmony. I think humanity would have found another way, he said finally. We always do, we just would have taken longer and a lot more Species might have been destroyed while we figured it out, and now smiled as he watched a former hegemony destroyer, helping to construct a new exploration station that would be used to contact species in distant galaxies. Now we get to find out what happens when the universe is full of friends instead of enemies, he said as the Terran began its journey to the next sector that needed help. Captain stood on the bridge, feeling the quantum connections that now linked billions of evolved minds across the galaxy. Humanity had graduated, but their education was just beginning. The stars ahead were full of possibilities, and for the first time in their history, humans were not exploring alone.